everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to this month's edition of Conversations with Doc Lou and Friends. I'm Doc Lou Querubin and Chief Medical Officer of the Mindcare Club. Mindcare Club is an online telemental health service, and we are capping Pride Month this afternoon by discussing a lot of burning issues that concern our LGBTQ population. And we have a number of our care team members who are actually frontliners for LGBTQ service. So today we will talk about it from an integrative perspective, from the biological issues, developmental transitions, and psychological concerns, and of course, love in all its colors. Yan naman ang theme natin ngayong hapon na to para sa ating mga clients na concerned regarding sex transition, gender orientation, and sexuality. We will put a focus on that today. So as a way of parang overview, itong LGBTQ concerns, matagal na natin itong pinag-uusapan. Pero as always, sa lahat ng mga bagay na bago, mayroon tayong pinagdadaanan na transition. I was in fact telling our guest this afternoon that to me personally, as a psychiatrist that has been in practice for several decades now, to understand the phenomenon of LGBTQ and the issues that concern them is still a learning curve. And I think it's nice for us to talk about all of these things today because we understand that there are things we still don't know, but there are also many more things that we already know because at the bottom line, human development is shared by all of us. And at the bottom of that bottom line, it is love that will bind all of us together. So, our guests tonight are members of the Mindcare Club care team of providers. And our first guest, and I'm very happy to welcome, is Dr. Ron Elepaño. Hi, Ron. So, Ron is a
Hi,
consultant
Doc
psychologist.
Lou.
Hi. How are you? Tagal na tayo nakikita. So,
Yes.
Dr. Ron is a consultant psychiatrist at Medical City, and its HIV hub, which is known as iReact Clinic. So Ron works there. Doc Ron also practices at the Revisage Skincare and Aesthetic Clinic and at the Total Care Institute. He has a wide range of clinical interests, including drama, stage. Ron also is interested in singing, and of course, professionally, a clinical interest in psychotherapy and LGBTQ health. The Mindcare Club is in fact blessed to have Ron as one of its psychiatrists, and today we will hear his views on the development of sexuality, yan na, sexual orientation, and gender identity from the perspective of normal human development. So, welcome, Ron, to Conversations with Doc Lou. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. And I'm looking forward to having this fruitful conversation this afternoon to everyone who's listening.
Oo nga, we're also very interested to hear what you have to share. Kasi there's nothing like really the experience of a clinician who also shares a particular interest in a population and its needs, no? So, dalawa ang guest natin sa hapon na ito. Our second guest is another Mindcare Club care team member. She is a licensed psychologist, a psychometrician, and defines herself as an eclectic psychotherapist. So her name is Franz van Doorn. Nung una ko siyang nakausap, sabi ko, Van Doorn, Dutch ka ba? Tapos sabi niya, hindi, Belgian. Sabi ko, ay, chocolate, no? So, hi, Franz. So, Franz has a master's degree in psychology from the Philippine Women's University. She works at the DOH Drug Treatment Rehabilitation Center in Dagupan and is, of course, an active advocate for LGBTQ plus health. Like Doc Ron, France is at the front line of the Mindcare Club LGBTQ care team, and she espouses integrative development and patient care focused on self acceptance. So, hello, France, and welcome to Conversations with
Hello
Dr.
po,
Prince.
Doc. Hello po, Doc. Thank you for having me here.
Nako, it's our pleasure. Lalo na very shy ang mga care team members natin. You hardly see them on screen, di ba? Nakikita lang kayo ng mga pasyente one-on-one. But, you know, especially ngayon. So, Kamusta where you are at this time?
Still at
On
work.
traffic? Ha?
Still in Pangasinan po, Dagupan.
Oo
Kayo ba?
nga, si Franz is in Dagupan and Ron is in.
I'm currently in Quezon City.
Ayan, nakabalik na si Ron. Matagal na wala si Ron eh. So, maraming salamat for finding the time and also maraming salamat sa technology kasi pwede nating gawin to. In the past, before COVID, hindi natin to magawa eh, no? So, puntahan na natin yung mga issues. So, yung unang-una siguro, parang background lang dun sa mga nakikinig at saka nakakapanood sa atin, no? Either sa live stream or sa on-demand nito much later. Ang pag-uusapan natin is about a particular segment of the population which is still by far considered minority. Minority in terms of statistical size and number. So, underreported ang percentage of the population that are that define themselves or identify themselves as part of the LGBTQ community. Sa US data na nakita ko noong 2022, 3.5% of a general adult population identify as LGB. So that's lesbian, gay, and bisexual. But and only 0.3% identify as trans. But of all of this population, majority pa rin ang nag-identify as bisexuals. So, anong comment natin tungkol dito sa konsepto na they're a sexual minority? Kasi naalala ko nung pinag-uusapan natin 'tong point sa conversation, Ron, you mentioned something that to me is very, very, beautiful, 'no? And I think it's an important concept to start the ball rolling, which is that the world is at the precipice of a gender revolution.
Yes, definitely. I think appreciation of gender then is so different from how we appreciate gender now. I mean, of course, we have to acknowledge that there still is stigma and fear surrounding conversations with gender, but we are more open now talking about it. There's more people who are allies willing to work with those who have, questioning or burning questions when it comes to gender, and there's more appreciation when it comes to gender. I think the difficulty here is, we still, the more we know or the
Yeah,
more we study it, the more we realize that there's still a lot that we don't know. So
that's true.
much of the terms that we're using now keeps evolving. Things that we before it was just LGBT. Now there's QI, XYZ, and all that. So
Oh,
I think it speaks or it speaks to a lot of our desire to be curious, you know,
mhm,
as
mhm.
as providers also in healthcare. I mean, I think that's what makes you somehow a good provider of healthcare if you're continually searching for answers.
That's true. Ang ganda nun ano, kasi it takes a lot of humility for us doctors and, psychologists, healthcare team members to actually accept that there are things we don't know. Um, kasi ngayon talagang transitioning itong concept of LGBTQ. Kaya yung sinasabi mong at the precipice of a gender revolution that in fact, siguro kung hindi underreported ang data na 'to or if if we become more aware of the nuances of sexual development, baka majority of us are actually non-binary. I mean, it's a thought, na hindi siya absolute boy or girl, absolute male or female, but there is so much gray in between. Kaya nga multiple colors. Hindi siya gray, maraming kulay, 'no? So, yung gender revolution na pinag-uusapan natin is the, paradox of this idea na this minority is probably not the minority. That if we grew, more sensitive even to ourselves, no, we will actually discover that there are so many layers to our being. And at yun ang pag-uusapan natin ngayon, no? Reflect on those things. So, Ron, mayroong question kasi na in the past, kino-consider na ang homosexuality is an illness. Naalala mo, sa DSM-5, hindi pa tayo mga doktor nung panahong yon. Nung unang-unang panahon, yung DSM-5, homosexuality was part of mental disorder. No? And it took a revolution, as you would say, to take it out of the DSM-5. So, yung pagdating sa sexual development, paano natin maintindihan na normal yon? Ano bang konsepto ng normality ng sexual development?
Anyway, when it comes to development, it's nice to look at it from at least in a more technical term, yung Ericksonian perspective.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there are certain stages that are expected to be achieved. Now, remember that during the time that Erickson created this developmental model, DSM has still yet to depathologize homosexuality, because depathologization of homosexuality came in at around the time after DSM-3. So that was DSM-4 na, no? So,
Mm-mm.
but it's still the essence of the Ericksonian model still exists, that um, generally biologically, at age 2 or 3, you have your sense of knowing that you are male versus female. That's more
Mm.
from a biological standpoint. You know that I have male parts, I have female parts. But
Mm.
by adolescent period, that's a time you somehow come to realize that, oh, okay, I'm attracted to the opposite sex or the same sex. And this is where Ericksonian became more popular, because of that stage of identity versus whole confusion. So by that time, they've also applied it in more modern models in terms of appreciating sexual orientation, for one, like the LGB, as to how does it come to be that we start being attracted to those of the opposite sex, the same
Mm.
sex. And then other, theorists came into the picture. One of them is Bem's concept of um, exotic to erotic. So, when we are younger, just imagine when we were kids,
Mm.
boys would have tumble and play, and then while girls will have to play with dolls and all that. So, softer play on. And then as a child, you appreciate it from an exotic standpoint. Like, for boys, you see girls playing with dolls, and what is that? Like, it seems very foreign to them. And then once you reach the adolescent period, you start exhibiting secondary sexual characteristics. You start feeling differently about this exotic nature of the play that the opposite sex presents. But it's a
Mm.
little bit different when you start becoming part of the gender minority. The For you, although one of the theories there is that those who come from the LG communities tend to have the same play as the sex that they usually identify with. So, for instance, if you're gay, your play is not rough tumble play; it's
Mm.
more softer play. So,
Mm.
to see boys play rough tumble, that's exotic to them. And then
Yeah.
once the adolescent period comes in, puberty kicks in.
Mm.
From exotic, it becomes erotic, and
Erotic.
that's where the attraction comes in.
Wow. Franz, anong comment mo about diyan, yung normal yung stage ng human development? Kasi ang turo talaga sa atin at 36 months or at age 3, nagkakaroon na talaga ng biological consciousness. Every individual in the human development may biological consciousness na I am boy, I am girl. Pero meron din akong kilala na, well, hindi naman kasi lahat ng LGBTQ na kilala natin ay pasyente, 'di ba? Meron akong mga kakilala na LGBTQ na sabi nga nila, since bata pa siya, mga 3, 4, 5 years old, naglalaro yung mga kapatid niya ng superheroes. Okay? So, Batman and Robin, yung dalawa niyang kuya. Tapos supposedly, siya yung isa pang superhero, pero sabi niya, siya si Darna.
Mhm.
As early as 3 years old, Darna na siya sa isip niya. 'Di ba? So that is identification.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes? Oo.
Uh, it's something like, ano, how do you want to see yourself? No? Siguro,
Yes.
try to explore, oy, mas maganda yung damit ni Darna. Mas gusto ko yun, no? Parang may ganun.
Oo.
Meron pa ako kasi may mga bata pa lang, kahit babae, ay, gusto ko yung pants kasi ayoko yung, dress, gusto kong tumakbo. So parang it's, when we're going to start with the children, yun yung wala pang concept na, oy, ganito, ganyan, ganyan. Although meron, oy, wag yan, kasi pantalon dapat ikaw, o kaya palda ka, ganun. Pero makikita mo na in their innocent mind, on their being, their really inner, parang child talaga, no? Yun yung
Mm.
parang pinaka-core, yung from the start na, uy, I like this one, na kasi mas mamove ako. Kumbaga, it's like biologically, in yung kanyang structure ng kanyang katawan, or or I don't know, with the doctor's term, no? Na parang innate siya, parang instinctually, na
Mm.
ganito ako, I'm sporty, I don't want to do that. So parang umpisa pa lang, nakikita mo na yung growth niya. Kaya po, Doc, maganda yung ginawa ni, I don't know, medyo may mag-showbiz tayo ng konti. Si Angelina Jolie, yung kanyang anak, she doesn't uh, close her na, oh, babae ka lang, ito lang yung dal lang sa'yo. Parang inopen niya lang, sige, anong gusto mo madamitin, I will let you, I will not, it's a good thing. Kasi makikita niyo po na, pero yung people will say, oh, pag laki niyan, magiging tomboy yan. Pero you look at her, she likes to, now na adolescent siya, she wants to explore.
It's very
Kumbaga,
pretty. Yeah.
yes, she's very pretty right now. Mala Brad Pitt na female version din. So it's like, we will not hinder who really they are. And not
Mm.
stereotyping, oh, porket nung bata ka, mahilig ka yung paper doll na dress, no, it doesn't mean na bading ka kaagad lahat, agad-agad. So, if we
Mm.
don't close it, kasi ang nangyayari, para tayong nagiging parang yung ginagawa, parang straight na ako, ito, ginabay na rin natin na, oh, dahil malamya siya, yung kilos niya is malamya, ay, bading niya. No, it's not that. No? Kumbaga parang, there are different kinds of, how do you call it, development nila. And if you
Oo.
don't hinder it, mas makikita natin uniqueness of what a person is. Ganun po.
Okay. So, I think for those who are listening, it's important to, for especially if you're parents, no, to listen to that. That when you observe the children, your own children, you will see that each of them will have their own developing identity, even as a toddler, no. Pagka nag-shopping na kayo for clothes or ano yung gusto nilang laruin, lalabas at lalabas yun eh. Pero society or culture now puts a stop to that and says, hindi mo yan pwedeng gawin kasi babae ka. Hindi mo yan pwedeng gawin kasi lalaki ka. Alam
I
mo,
think
diba?
Diane Aronsap, one of the renowned child psychologists, who has done a lot of research towards gender non-conforming children. And as what Franz was saying, society has a lot to do with, you know, somehow um, negative outcomes of
Yeah.
forced gendering on children. So I
Oh,
think one of the things that she was encouraging then was, you don't necessarily have to impose gender roles on children, like what they like to wear, what they like to play with, as what Franz was saying. If you allow them to choose freely and not limit it within that binary, you foster actually creativity.
yeah.
So
But
I
the
think that's also something that we also want to cultivate, that creative brain that is developed also helps be protective also for further mental health conditions in the future.
which leads us directly to the Mindcare Club experience, no? I mean, lahat tayo nakaka-encounter tayo ng patients na bahagi ng LGBTQ na segment ng population. Tapos, siguro we can speak to that experience. Ano ang karanasan natin dealing with these types of patients? Kasi naka-connect siya dun sa pinag-usapan natin eh, na uh, yung forced gendering, no? Na ginagawa ng parents, ng society, ganon. So, maybe we can talk now about what is your experience with Mindcare Club clients?
Mhm.
Maybe,
Okay.
yeah, Ron? Yeah,
Sige,
Ron?
me first. Usually kasi when clients come to me, there's a specific reason because remember in Mindcare Club we're a step care model. So
Yeah.
sometimes they really try they come in first step, second step, I'm on the third step. So there are specific needs when clients come to me. More commonly it's for assessment, for if they need clearances for gender affirming care. So for instance they need hormones, they need top surgery or even bottom surgery. So that's the time they come to me. Some naman are more comfortable if they are identified LGBT care providers or even LGBT uh, self-identified provider, meaning I am not going to deny that I'm a gay therapist, psychiatrist. So some clients are very much willing, are more open to seeing a therapist who is like that.
Mm.
So these are the usual portals of entry into my own telemedicine clinic in my care club.
Yeah, so it's really more towards assessing them for gender affirmative either procedures and
Mhm.
treatment, no? So I think that's a growing thing also. Kasi ngayon na lang naman lumalabas yung gender affirmation, 'di ba? Na
Mhm.
talagang process. Unlike before, it's done under the radar. Nangyayari naman eh, pero hindi out in the open. Ngayon, there really are centers of care that
Yes.
attend to that, right?
Yes. I think yun nga, it's very exciting. I've been doing this for years. I mean, even the time of my training, I've started to build a skill set around that. Uh, you know, s- driven my own subspecialty to that service because I knew that it was one of those marginalized populations. No, but
Right.
they're underserved. So I've seen really the shift from those having to go abroad just to get the necessary care they need. They have to buy from black market, which I really advise against because we don't know the quality of those. Now we have providers. There's a team that we can refer you to if you need these treatments or these therapies.
Siguro emphasize natin yon ano, yung i-underscore ko lang yung what Doc Ron said that we are now equipped to actually refer and identify the sources of proper care that you will need and by consulting either Doc Ron or Frances, we will be able to point you to reputable institutions or care facilities where you can get gender affirming treatment, no? Um, Franz, yung sa experience mo, ano ang nakikita mo sa Mindcare Club? 'Di ba yung pinag-uusapan natin a few days ago, yung parang yung chief complaint ano, as a psychotherapist, ano yung nakukuha mo from the chief complaint na yung iyong radar ay, teka muna, kailangan hanapin ko pa kung saan nanggagaling itong nangyayari sa pasyente ko. Anong sinasabi nila? Anong Mindcare Club experience mo?
Okay. Okay, okay.
Yes.
Ako ba 'to? Okay.
Oo, ikaw.
Okay, okay, sorry. Okay, for the mind care experiences po, yung usual chief complaint nila is, sinasabi nila, malungkot ako pero hindi ko alam kung bakit. No? So, they are successful, maganda naman yung kanyang work, okay naman kanyang family, no? Okay naman yung kanyang achievements and everything, pero they were saying na hindi ko alam bakit ako malungkot
Malungkot.
pa. Parang anong reason? Wala namang kailangan i-reason na malungkot ako. So after we
Mm.
talk about it, nakalkal ko na ano kasi siya, she's denying who she is. No, kumbaga, it's like, she's like, yes. Kumbaga, pag kasi sa ang approach ko sa ganun, ma'am, is, Doc, is Adlerian. When we say Adlerian, you are going to reflect your highest self, your ideal version of you. So, usually, kasi we are, uh, I call that, yung we want society to accept us. So yung ginawa niya, acceptable ng society. Ang problema, that is not her higher self. That is not her fullest potential. No? Ang nangyari kasi, she is somehow pretending. No? Through that, there is para bang unconsciously, no, hindi siya natutuwa kasi hindi siya authentic self. Eh. So, kaya nga, I would like to acknowledge yung itong may bestseller sa Japan ngayon, no? Sabi niya rito, Courage to be Disliked, no? If I say Courage to be Disliked by Fumitake Koga at saka Ichiro Kishimi, no? This is
Ah,
a book inspired by Adler. Kasi Adler, in Adlerian approach, is they believe in, ang tanong dyan, how does the society benefit for you? Okay, am I beneficial to the community? No? Doon mag-i-stem po yung mga depression. Kasi from the very beginning, am I beneficial to community? Kung umpisa pa lang, there is a discrimination. No? Umpisa pa lang, teka, kasi if you're going to ask most of our clients, especially if it's LGBT, they don't want to be an LGBT. Ang hirap yung you're always bullied, you always have to defend to minsan sarili mo, why you have to do this, you have to do that, no? It adds to our, to their depression, no? Kumbaga, you're not to the fullest of your potential, no? So, um, yung, yung self-worth nawawala kapag they don't accept who they are, no? But if they start to accept who they are, no? When I said, oh, ma'am, ano okay lang naman ho yung makakaroon kayo ng attraction sa ibang, sa same sex, no? Okay lang naman kayo, it's normal for you to, as long as you think na comfortable ka doon and you're not abusing anyone. So, no, yung courage to be disliked. Kasi it all started with be disliked, but then in the future, you will be liked by the right people. No? Kasi magkakaroon po yung pressure na, kailangan ma-accept ako ng people, ma-accept ako ng people. The more we focus on kailangan ma-accept ako ng people with the society and everything, nakakadagdag yan sa self-rejection of who you are. Kasi the more you consider yung paligid mo, ganito dapat pala kasi dapat, the more na nawawala yung real self mo. Kaya yung client ko, I don't know why I'm not happy. I always kalkal, ano ba talaga ang gusto mo gawin sa buhay mo? Ano ba ka talaga kasi? Who are you really? And then, kahit despite of their age, minsan sabihin pa nila, I actually don't know who I am. When
that's
actually,
true.
dapat teenager pa lang, young adult pa lang, they know who they are para ma-navigate nila on the path that they want to take, that they want to walk on to.
Mm. That's very nice, no? Yung exchange ni Ron tsaka ni Frances, yung tungkol sa development ng identity na napakalinaw habang bata ka. Pero dahil nasasabihan ka ng signals ng society, ng family, ng values around you na hindi yun dapat, di syempre isipin mo, oh, kung hindi yun dapat, ano ang dapat? No? So, nagko-conflict ngayon yung sinasabi sa'yo na dapat at saka kung ano yung tunay mong nararamdaman. At siyempre, dahil pag nagiging intense ang ganong klaseng conflict, naturally, yan po ang na-encounter namin sa aming mga clients na pumupunta sa Mindcare Club at sa aming mga sari-sariling mga clinic. Now, I would like to encourage the people who are watching or listening to us to please join the conversation by putting in your questions or your comments. No, you can join us in the chat, or type in your questions so that our experts can actually respond to them. So para hindi kayo ma-fake news, no? Dito na kayo sa mga nagsasabi ng totoo at merong mga tunay na karanasan dito sa problemang tinatahak natin ngayong araw na 'to. So yung pagdating sa regular healthcare, ano ba ang risks ng physical health for our clients? Ron, as the doctor, maybe that's something that you can address.
Yes, oo. I think that's the one of the more common assessments that I make when a client comes to me that is of LGBT concerns. I
Mm,
make a health assessment in terms of primarily yung sexual health nila. What are their current sexual health practices? Because most of the time, we don't have valid information or reputable information to get this from. Of course, we have the internet, but it's still different having someone explain it to you without judgment and very open to talking about what are your sexual practices, is it safe, what are the risks if you have these practices, and that's something that can be talked about during sessions. Another thing is doing the regular health checks. For instance, for the gay clients, we do recommend if they're very sexually active or they're sexually active to get tested for HIV at least every 6 months or every 3 months, depends on their sexual activity and the type of practices that they have. Are they also aware of what are their options in terms of protection? The same goes with those the lesbians who needs OB gynecologic care.
mm,
It can be a little bit challenging, especially if their how they are presenting in public might not be what the public assumes as acceptable. For
mm,
instance, you're not necessarily trans, you're gay, but you like to wear, or present yourself as feminine. So
mm,
it becomes a little bit challenging going to the doctor's office, having to be treated. And the same goes with if you are a lesbian who are more manly presenting. It might be challenging going to an ultrasound center, having to look very manly, and
that's
it
true.
can be a
Oo.
little bit stigmatizing. So I think it's not limited also to just an internal experience of being accepted by society, but a lived experience of having been rejected by society that somehow worsens or aggravates that disturbance or conflicts that people can feel when they are being treated this way, and of course if they want to be more open and true to their own gender.
Kasi pagka gano'n na nagkakaroon ng rejection, it discourages the patient or the individual to actually seek help. So kahit na may
Yes,
nararamdaman na o alam naman na kailangan may regular na HIV check or regular na ultrasound or mammogram, no?
yes,
Um, they find it difficult because of the previous rejection that they feel. Now, there's
yes,
a question. Siguro when they consult with us, we can actually tell them, no, where to go, how to go about it, who are the providers. There's a question from Paula Guillermo. Hi, Paula. The question is, how can we reach out safely as friends or family of people who try to suppress their gender preference or are afraid to come out? Ayan na. Sabi sa inyo, lalabas yung issue ng coming out eh. Kasi pinaghandaan na, pinag-iisipan namin yung coming out. So, can both of you please respond to Paula? Paano ba yan? How can we reach out?
France, go. France muna.
O sige, Franz, how do you think? Anong
I
advice
think,
natin?
yes, if you show that you are, kumbaga, kami yun, yung ka-coalition na straight, yung if they see na open ka to any, to any gender, na you are accepting them who they are, as long as you, yung parang assuring them na you accept them whatever, whoever they are, no? Without any judgment. Uy, Pride Month, yung parang simpleng ano lang, uy, Pride Month, o yung ano ko, tito ko, ganyan din, no? Nakakatuwa kaya yung simpleng parinig na you're accepting towards them, no? Pero when it comes to coming out, no, it's a personal, we cannot force it. Mahirap po kasi i-pressure siya na, uy, alam ko na ano ka, lumabas ka na nga, gano'n, gano'n. Mahirap yan kasi mamaya, di ba, shock siya. Or maybe she or he is still in denial. Pero siguro so blindly, kumbaga parang pahapyaw na you're accepting with all the gender and you tell her somehow, oh, may friends ako na, no, ang galing-galing nga niya, kahit na bading siya o kahit na tibo siya, no. So, yun lang. So, just don't force kasi it's their own preference. Pero when they come out, that's the time na very important. You should be there na, my friend, hindi ako magbabago, I'm just here to accept you. Ilang po.
Okay. Oh, that's nice, no? Na to be there if and when it happens. Hindi requirement ang coming out, ha? I think hindi requirement ang coming out unless you want to go through that process or hindi mo kailangan kasing markahan eh. Na, oh, bukas magka-come out ako. Hindi kailangang markahan. No? So, Ron, can you respond to that? This whole concept of coming out.
Yes, I do agree. I think the coming out is really a Western concept. It's very different from our culture, but I think our culture tends to adapt to the influences of popular culture also. So, as I was saying before, with when we were discussing about this, the normal or the way we perceive gay in the Philippines has somehow morphed to how the Western perceives gay, diba? So, medyo we adapt to that. That's the same with coming out.
Mm,
Now, I do agree with France. I mean, walang pilitan. You know, we will just come at a place where we just accept people for who they are without judgment. And I think the world will be such a wonderful place if we accept people for who they are without judgment. Just siguro to put perspective also that people assume that when you come out that will solve a lot of people's problems, you know, but it's
that's
not
true.
necessarily so.
Mm,
Even in studies, there was a controversial study about coming out very early. And when I was attending this course on uh, gay development, the study showed that those who come out later in life tend to become more successful than those who came out later in life. And then people were up in arms and were rejecting that finding, and they were saying like, no, I mean, I came out early. I'm a doctor and blah blah blah. But what they were saying then was the study showed that, and this was done in the Western
mm,
part of the world, you know. So those who came out early had early exposure to high risk sexual behavior, drug
okay.
exposure. So they really didn't, they weren't able to finish school. They had to endure very bad trauma. So what I think that study really teaches us to make coming out safer for everyone. And I
Mm,
think that we all deserve that.
that's very true. To provide safe environment is a human right. Wala
Exactly.
siyang pinipili, 'di ba? So, and I think kung may mga nakikinig sa'tin na mga human resource directors or managers 'no, um, parents, principals, administrators of schools, and directors of certain institutions, it's part of a leadership responsibility to create an environment that is gender affirming. No, na walang kasi environment ang rejection, eh, attitude. It's kumbaga sa ang sabi nila nasa ambiance. Hindi naman sinasabing, "Ay nire-reject kita." Hindi naman, eh. Nararamdaman lang ng tao na siya ay rejected. At we have to be very conscious. Kaya nga siguro kailangan ditong Pride Month kasi it's a growing consciousness that people are fighting for. So, there's a question from Christine Rodriguez, yung, how can I reconcile my or my loved one's sexual orientation with my faith? And by this, I would assume faith is in reference to being Catholic or Christian, no, to church, I would think. Kasi faith is
Or I
very
think
general.
religion, or maybe religion in
Religion,
general.
more religion. Kasi pagdating sa faith, mas madaling i-explain.
Mm.
So, paano i-reconcile?
Ah, sige. You want to
Sige,
take it
Ron.
muna, France?
Oh, si
Or ako
Franz o
muna?
si Ron? Sinong
Ako
unang
muna.
gustong
Okay.
sumagot dyan?
Sige. Um, well, for one, again, it's really looking at religion and faith as also in its very core. Like, I think if you look at themes um, across the board in all religious practices, what does the what is at its core? At the end of the day, it's love in its purest form. Love one another as I would love you. Love one another as I would love, you know, my yeah. If I were to love you, I should be able to, show that love to others as well. So I think with all the rules that has been set in all religions, people then get that message gets muddled along the way by
Mm,
such rules. So I think it's coming to terms with that realization that, you know, and I always say this whenever that discussion comes out, that in a system created by man, which is primarily religion, there will always be flaws.
mm,
And if you appreciate that, despite that flaws, it shouldn't stop you from practicing your faith in that form of religion, because by essence it's supposed to make you a better person. Then there's no reason why you cannot be LGBT and still practice whatever religion you're in. So
mm,
I think that that's always something that you have to, it's a journey that you will have to come to terms with. Of course, it would help if you find community also.
mm,
If people also share that same practice. Um, Believe it or not, there are a lot of LGBT communities who do go to church at the same time.
yeah.
One of the meetups I had when I was in New York was, oh, I'm going to mass, but I'm going to meet up with a trans woman who is one of the active members of um, trans care in New York. Um, and she said, like, okay, I'm going to mass, would you like to join me? And then we can
Mm,
have lunch after. And then, like, after that, like, we were talking about religion and like how that actually helped them in the coming out process. So
yeah.
I think it really is also a personal journey, and it also is helped by a sense of community.
Okay. Ang ganda nun ano, kasi kung talagang titignan mo, at the bottom line, ang message naman ng halos lahat ng religion ay talagang acceptance, 'di ba, of everyone and love, 'no? So tama yung sinasabi mo, yung love others as I loved you or loved others as you love yourself, 'no? There's another question from Carl Rufo about how can someone respond to homophobic and transphobic attitudes? Sinong gustong sumagot niyan? Franz
France
or
muna.
Ron? Oo, paano ba yan?
Ito na ako ng
Kunwari,
breakfast.
merong na tao na homophobic or transphobic. Um, ang anong take ng ating mga guests dito sa question na 'to?
Okay, so one way to respond to homophobic and transphobic attitude is understand. Understand them, no? Kasi may pinanggagalingan yan. Bakit? Kasi usually we are um, strongly affected if it's part of us, no? Kumbaga, um, what we could only do is to understand them. Kasi kumbaga, we don't have to defend na ganito, ganyan, ganyan. Maybe if the person question you, you can say kung ano man yung side mo. Pero usually, yung ibang tao kasi na ganyan, medyo close yung kanilang mind. So just let them. And kung siguro lumayo ka na lang sa kanila, or kung talagang inahabol-habol ka pa rin niya, no? Just try to maintain yourself and know yourself. Kasi if you know yourself, stable ka kung sino ka, no? Hindi ka maapektuhan nila, no?
Mm.
So, yun na lang if that's how you respond, no? Pwedeng i-ignore mo, pwedeng i-defend mo, no? Depende dun sa tao. Kung halimbawa, yung, kasi public eh, parang fear of it, parang, ganun. Parang pwedeng through education, pero kung minsan kasi, if we defend na, oh, ganito, ganyan, ganyan, hindi pa sila ready to accept it. So,
Mm.
to understand it. Then, siguro just respect. As long as you're not hurting me, then we're okay. Yun yung paniniwala mo. As long as you're not hurting me, then we're okay. I respect your belief. Pero ito ako. Kung gusto mo ang buhay mo is black and white, ako ang gusto ko ang buhay ko ay makulay.
Oh. Mm.
I'd like to weigh in lang kasi I think this question stems from the recent viral incident, in in Makati, where there was a big rumble because just to put context, in a parang bar area in Makati, there was this big fight that ensued, and which led to the arrest of the ones who were being slighted. So I think it's also a case by case situation. For one, I will never really um, uh, encourage violence as a solution.
Yes.
The
Sure.
whole idea of an eye for an eye leads us all blind. So I think for one, pick your battles. If these are people that you can have healthy discussion with or debate with, where you can end with, if ever you can encourage them to see your point of view and change their perceptions, well and good. But if you can at the very least agree to disagree and leave it at that, and not have anybody end up with bruises or being stabbed or something like that, all in good. But I think it's a matter of, as what Marshall Linehan would say in dialectical behavioral therapy,
Right.
what
Yeah.
does your wise mind say? We all have voices, we all have opinions, we all want to be heard. But in a society where we all are shouting to the top of our lungs, we forget that what is the essence of communication is that someone has to listen. So you can listen to that homophobic, transphobic attitudes and know that there's no point in actually trying to correct them anymore, because these are persons who are not ready for that. And
Mm.
maybe you can fight your battles in another way. So taking that into consideration, bringing in your wise mind whenever these situations come up. But suffice to say, we are somehow progressing. If you think about it, there's a lot, as what we were saying earlier, there are a lot of um, LGBT care centers now that are available to help you. Secondly, there is a bill that they're trying to pull forward. But even if the bill hasn't moved forward, a lot of institutions have made the necessarily adjustments for inclusivity. So a lot of institutions or companies now are more inclusive, or even businesses. So one way is really we rally around these institutions and support them to hear our let our voices be heard louder as a group. The recent Gay Pride March is one of the most attended in the recent years, considering that we're coming from a pandemic. The recent Pride March last Saturday is testament to that we are we're, as I say, we're here and deal with it.
Hmm. Yeah. So, I think that that's a very nice way of putting it, no, Ron, yung learning to fight your battles. And some people are just hardliners, eh. In any disagreement or debate in society, meron lang talagang mga hardliners na kahit na anong gawin mo, hindi mo sila mako-convince. So, kailangan ma-identify din natin na hindi na natin kailangang galawin yung segment na yon ng population. Pero there is definitely space for this kind of discussion. There is you can do it in schools, you can do it in families, in churches, in institutions where the primary advocacy is love and kindness. Kasi 'pag dun tayo pumasok sa advocacy ng love and kindness and understanding that the other person is another human being, whom we probably do not know or understand in totality at this point, then the discussion becomes easier. Merong question ulit. Nasaan yung question ni Joanna? Nasaan? Ayun, from Joanna Poblador. Hello, good afternoon, Joanna. The question is, how can you deal with religion that don't accept LGBTQIA+? Siguro pag religion, ibig sabihin particular churches to, no? Kasi hindi
Church,
naman
yeah.
natin ma-generalize na yung, yung religion na yan, ganito yan, I think.
Well, I think it goes back to, and I think France also is aware of this because we both work in the field of drug addiction. There's always that prayer that we use uh, in recovery, that is the serenity prayer. Grant me to accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and wisdom to know the difference. And that has helped me in my practice all these years.
It's true.
There are certain battles that you can fight and win. There are battles that are not even worth pursuing. So maybe, simply put, if it's a religion that doesn't accept you, it doesn't take away from your faith. you know the religion itself may not accept you, meaning the institution that's there. Then find an institution that is accepting of you. You don't necessarily have to change religion, just maybe the church that you're getting into, might be more accepting of you. I think one of the more progressive stances that we've gotten from the Catholic faith was when Pope Francis said, like, "Who am I to judge?" Right?
That's
So
right.
I think
Yeah.
there's more acceptability now, and it goes back to your personal relationship with the higher power that you allude to.
Mm. Mm. Franz, can you comment on that? Ano nga bang gagawin diyan sa mga ganyan?
Okay, so as Doc Ron have told us, no, now we have to accept things that we cannot change and courage to know the difference. When we say religion, it is something na na-establish na. Okay? Ang goal natin dito, bakit ba kasi may religion? Diba? To enhance our faith, to enhance our spirituality. So you have to differentiate, Ma'am Joanne. Is there a difference between a religion and spirituality? If you can detect those difference of that two, you will see na you don't need to force yourself into a specific religion. It's
Yeah.
the way a religion is, it's as Doc Ron said na kanina na it's created by men also for to improve the relationship, our relationship with the higher power, no? Kung sino man yung God natin, no? So yun nga, if you could cultivate, no? Sabi nga natin, in all religion, kung titingnan mo lahat ng religion, is all about love and kindness. No? So if we anchor to that, I think, how do you see your God? How do you see your God? Is your God vindictive, or is your God more on love and kindness and acceptance? No? Babalik po ako dun sa Adlerian, no? Na kasi part po kasi ng psyche natin ng spirituality. Our worth, why we are alive. No? So, if we accept, ano ba talaga tayo, no? If we accept na as long as we don't hurt anyone, as long as we don't abuse anyone, then I think our God will love us as that and accept us as that. No? Yun po, yung ano,
Okay.
insight.
Ayan, lumalalim ang discussion. Talagang, ano to, very complex itong discussion na to, no? And there are several levels to it. Ngayon, if there are more questions about religion and morality regarding the LGBTQ, siguro we will put up another episode where we will now naman invite other people who are experts in the field of faith and religion. Kasi hindi po experts si Doc Ron at si Frances sa issue na to, but we can respond to it from the perspective of healthcare professionals, mental health professionals responding to these types of conflict. Kasi talagang merong merong dilemma, merong ethical at saka moral dilemma na nakapasok sa ganito. Pero I must tell you to all our listeners and viewers that this is not limited to the LGBTQ. Ha? Morality and ethical dilemmas will be universal. Lahat po tayo ay harap ng mga ganyang moments na kailangan nating mag-reflect o magnilay-nilay, no? Merong isang viewer din tayo na may tanong. Jamie, hi Jamie. Thank you very much for coming to our podcast today, our live conversation. Mayroon po ba kayong maibabahagi na resources para ron sa mga taong confused pa sa sexuality nila? Like dun sa mga confused kung hindi sila straight. At salamat po sa podcast na ito. Napakaganda ng concern na 'to. Ano nga ba, do'n sa meron na bang resources na puwede nating i-point ng ating mga listeners or viewers? Ron?
Sorry, nakamute pala ako.
Oh,
Locally, we do have civic organizations that you can go online to. But in my experience, kasi medyo mahirap minsan yung kanilang resource materials. Pero you can try Bahaghari, you know. But I usually refer them to, of course, very Western pa rin kasi mas marami silang napag-aralan, ano. I usually refer them to PFLAG or the Trevor Project. So PFLAG has a lot of resources, especially if you're confused with the terminologies. You
hmm,
know, usually binibigay ko yung link na yon para makita nila kung ano yung mga updated kasi ang maganda sa PFLAG, they update their lexicon, yung kanilang terminologies as kung merong ginagamit dati versus ano na yung ginagamit ngayon. So medyo updated siya. The Trevor Project is also a US-based foundation that really services at-risk youth pagdating sa coming out process. So marami ring resources doon. So I usually use these two resources when I do recommend it. Kasi easy read siya sa na hindi masyado technical. Ano?
mm, mm. Oh, that's nice. So I think, puwedeng nating, ilagay yan sa chat so that
I
then
put it in, hindi pala ako
oo, you
lagay
can
ko na
put
lang
it
sa
in
private
the
chat.
comments, oo. Ayan, yung the trevorproject.org. Okay, pick up na ni Jamie. Okay. So, this is definitely a growing concern only because people who have considered themselves as being part of the sexual minority have actually started talking about themselves and finding their voice. So, ang maganda sa nangyayaring to is it really is forcing all of us to open our minds and be more inclusive and accepting of people regardless of their sexual orientation, no? So yung ano dun, siguro at the bottom line, pag-usapan na natin yung bottom line natin, which is actually love. Yung sabi nga natin, love is love, but love is also universal. So, yung attraction and sexuality and love, paano nag-connect yung mga bagay na yon? Oh, France,
Medyo
ikaw.
loaded yung question na yun.
Oo, kasi konektado siya, maraming nagtatanong, 'di ba? Kunwari, yung sexuality, siyempre nadi-discover natin yung ating sexuality because instinctively meron tayong nararamdamang attraction. Hindi natin pinag-iisipan yun, minsan papasok ka sa isang isang naglalakad ka lang, kunwari nagpapasyal ka, naglalakad ka lang, manonood ka sana ng sine, papasok ka pa lang may nakita ka, so, "Uy, attractive yun." Hindi mo naman iniisip yun, eh. Instinctive yun, 'di ba? Walang rhyme or reason ang attraction. Pero hindi ibig sabihin na kung attracted ka ay love yun,
Yes.
'di ba?
Well, I think this becomes also deeper discussion when there is a hazy definition of love. And I think it's very important that this is something that is discussed also uh, during your intakes with your mental health provider. In MCC, in my care club, for instance, when I get clients, regardless, I don't assume that just because they are male presenting or female presenting, I assume that they are uh, heterosexuals, homosexuals, LGBT. I do ask, and then I even ask deeper as to what do you mean by that, because my definition might not be the same definition as yours, and then that starts that conversation. At the end of the day, if it's love in its true genuine form, it knows no colors, you know and I think we will live in a better world when we encourage, cultivate love in its pure form.
That's a very nice thing to say, Rona, love in its pure form. So sana maalala ng ng mga lahat ng taong nandito sa podcast na 'to. France?
Okay. So, sa akin naman po, kasi marami akong mga Gen Z, Gen X, mga
The
boomers na
client?
nagtatanong sila na mga tao po na nakakasalumuha ko. Kasi they're confused din kasi bakit LGBTQI, kulang na lang, di ba? Hanggang Z na lang yung ilalagay na label, no? So, I always say, paano ba being straight na paano ba namin malalaman kung ano ba siya, saan siya doon sa mga letters na yun. So I always say na, kasi ganito po, para hindi po kayo ma-confuse at hindi nyo naiisipin lahat ng alphabet sa acronyms na yan. Ito pang isipin natin. As long as you are human and you love other human and not abusing them, that's that's the gender. Genderless siya. Kasi kahit naman po sabihin natin nilabel niya yung sarili niya na gay siya o kaya straight man siya, pero na may mga incident yung mga straight man na in love sa bading. Pero it doesn't mean na lahat na ng bading gusto niya. Hindi doesn't mean na bisexual siya. So, kuminsan kakaroon ng confusion. Pero when you take that out, take that label, katulad sinabi ni Doc Ron na, mas maganda, wag mo na lang kayang lagyan ng label. As long as you love that person, that's already love. Kaya nga sabi natin, love is love. So, parang hindi ka ma-confuse, as long as walang aabuso, and they love each other, and they don't harm other people, then that's the labelless love, as said by Dr. Ron, pure love. Yun po.
Okay. I think what's coming out in this discussion to everyone is that there is a need for the LGBTQ plus population to actually find a safe space for their care, both in terms of their physical needs, their psychosocial needs, their psychological care, but also in their own development as human beings. It is a cry, not just for justice or equality, but it is a cry to be recognized as human beings. And finding that safe space may be easy or may be hard, but I think this presentation is actually a discussion that tells you that Mindcare Club is a safe space for everyone who defines themselves as LGBTQ or are still in search of how they want or are still in search of identity. Just as how it is love is labelless, that love is universal, the struggle of human beings is also universal, no? Yung pain na nararamdaman natin when we feel lost or when we're rejected, it's not even about gender. It's really about who we are and how other people make us feel or how our environment feels. So this is a call out to everyone out there that if you need that safe space, Mindcare Club can offer that to you. And both Ron and Franz are at the forefront of our care team that can offer that kind of help and care that you need. And to the corporate clients who are actually perhaps listening to this podcast or will listen to it on demand afterwards, um, we encourage you to actually consult with Mindcare Club so that then you can have a more gender affirming environment in your particular institutions or organizations. So, help is available, a safe space is available, and in a virtual community of mental care professionals, Mindcare Club is able to give you that kind of care. So we have reached our time mark. So I would like to give the floor first to Franz and then to Ron for their last words for our listeners and viewers. So Franz, maybe your last words.
Okay. It's important to know and accept your authentic self in order to gain the worth, the reason of why we are living. So accept who you are. As long as you're not harming other people, it's okay. And if they dislike you at first, don't you worry. Right people will come to you and will like you as you are. Yun lang po.
Thank you very. That's very positive. Maraming salamat. And Doc Ron.
I think in the same theme, and I will quote one of my favorite LGBT advocates that we have, RuPaul, who has always said, you know, if you can't love yourself, how the hell you're gonna love somebody else? And learning that, we will be here for you at Mindcare Club. That journey towards learning to love yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Doc Ron and to Franz for gracing our afternoon today. I know it's a Friday afternoon and people are just getting off work. Ang dami nating napag-usapan, no, not only about LGBTQ, but of course the universality of love and kindness and how much the world needs people who are able to understand each other. I think if we are really serious about making this world a better place, we have to look at ourselves first. Because if we get confused and we feel that we don't understand another person, it's only because we don't know them well enough. So maraming salamat para sa ating mga bisita ngayong hapon na to, our care team members, Franz Van Doorn, who's a psychologist, and Dr. Ron Elepaño, who's a psychiatrist. Thank you very much. And to our core team that's been at the backstage of this live conversations, thank you. And of course, to those who regularly come and watch and listen to these live conversations, maraming salamat. We'll see you again in September. Goodbye. Happy loving. Bye.